What was your most awkward, haha, oh wait, you're serious? Moment? An old roommate wanted me to start paying more in rent because he was trying to save up to buy himself a house. Still in the crappy roommate vein of things, I had a roommate who demanded that I pay more in rent, utilities, and general supplies because he opened a pay stub that I had sitting in a pile of bills on the kitchen table and realized that I made 3 times the amount that he did. I was doing him a favor by letting him live in the apartment. Ended up kicking him out, and now I have the entire place to myself. LOL. Also, my name was the only one on the lease, so sucks to suck, I guess. That's quite hilarious. I asked a coworker what his son's name was, and he answered Legolas. After 2 seconds of laughing, I realized he wasn't laughing, and his son is actually named Legolas. My best friend named her son Slevin. I laughed until I realized she was serious. Poor kid. What kind of nicknames will he have? Slev? Slevy? Vin? I don't know. When I was in middle school, there was a period of a few weeks when kids would fake seizures to get a laugh. It was the hip thing to do. So I was at the mall toy store one day and came around the corner of an aisle and saw a kid a little younger than me on the ground absolutely killing it. I delightfully shouted, "Dude, you are good!" I'll never forget his parents' faces when I looked up and figured out what was really happening. I was in the 4th grade when one of my classmates had a legit seizure. Only his closest friend knew he ever had them at all, and he happened to be in the class with us. This dude was a huge class clown, always trying to get a laugh, but was generally a really nice person. Of course, he's up at the blackboard. It was actually green, strange thing to remember, and just starts convulsing. Everyone but his best friend thought it was a joke. I was too freaked out to laugh, but 90% of the other kids did. Once his friend jumped into action to keep him from slamming his head on the ground, it sunk in that this was real. I felt so bad for that kid, but as he was seizing, I really don't think he was able to hear the laughter. Sorry, Danny. Shout out to the 4th grader who knew how to act in that situation. When my daughter said she had been stung by a bee and it went all the way through her, it turned out that she had been stung on the chest and the back at the same time. What are the actual odds of that happening? I'd put it roughly at about 1 in a bazillion. I saw a largely pregnant woman and made a stupid comment. Bet you can't wait to get that out of you. She said, not really. The baby doesn't have a heartbeat, and I'm just waiting to have a stillbirth. To be honest, she was probably sick of people bugging her and wanted to screw with you hard. I was fairly pregnant myself with my first, so it's not like I didn't get it, or was just being a smartass. I thought I was making a mommy connection or something. We were in the clinic in the OBGYN waiting room, so maybe she was being morbid about it, but I got the impression that she was genuine. I googled it from my phone after she got called in, and it turns out that, yeah, you have to labor and delivery and everything. Can you imagine going through emotional and physical pain at the same time? When I was 18, I went with my then girlfriend to Las Vegas to meet her parents. We were in Florida where she lived with her aunt and uncle. I found out that her dad and mom lived in separate houses right across the street from one another for whatever reason, which was strange, but definitely not the strangest thing that would happen on that trip. Her dad came over to her mom's house to meet me, and I couldn't help but notice that he was dressed in a suit. I thought maybe he was just a fancy dresser. He kept asking me questions about my family and how I felt about his daughter. He seemed to like me, and we went through the trip on fairly pleasant terms, but nothing else happened of any note. Once we get back home to Florida, my girlfriend decides to tell me that her dad thought we were coming out to Vegas to get married, and he dressed up because he was planning on taking us to get married that day. She had to tell him that we had no intention of getting married in Vegas. He thought you two were getting married at 18? I suppose it happens, but it's not very common. Please tell that to my family. My siblings and I are the weird ones because the oldest is in their late 20s and not married, and my sister and I are mid-20s and not married. I have a cousin who is 26 and already divorced. For every girl I've brought home, my dad tried to have a legit conversation about if I think she's the one. He's on his 4th marriage. On Wednesday, a customer asked me why our produce section was so empty, especially in terms of stuff like lettuce. I told him that it was because of extreme weather in Spain, where we source most of our stuff from. He cut off my explanation with, "Why does it matter what's going on in Spain? We're in Scotland." I hate it when people do that crap. I've noticed a particularly large amount of it in the 45 to 55 male crowd. Seems to really decline before and after. But it's like they need to complain about something, but don't want to deal with an actual explanation. It seems like very odd behavior. That's when most men realize that their dreams won't come true and that their life sucks and they're pissed off at everyone. Someone once said to me, "Wait, you're Chinese? I always thought you were Asian." My niece, a very sheltered white girl, asked her camp boyfriend, "What kind of knees are you? Chinese? Japanese?" He responded, "Korean." I worked at a bookstore and a customer asked me why the hardcover and paperback versions of the same book didn't cost the same amount. I chuckled and said, "I guess I'll have to look into that." He came back to me 5 minutes later and asked if I had found out yet. Dated a girl for 4 months a few years back. One day we were chilling at my house, asked her if she wants to watch an episode of Brian Cox's documentary Wonders of the Universe, to which she told me she doesn't believe in space. She was 100% convinced that the sky was all that there was and that space was a huge cover-up by the government or some crap. At first I laughed, then we argued, and I couldn't win because I haven't been to space to prove it exists. We didn't see much of each other after that. But did you tell her while breaking up that you just need some space? I feel like we're light years apart from each other on this. I used to teach drama camp. Ugh. I would take suggestions from the kids on Monday, write a half-hour play based on those suggestions that night, and then they would perform it on Friday. I once had a parent come to see me after reading the script. She asked if there was a way to do the play with no conflict in it. I laughed, assuming she was making fun of the other PC soccer moms I had to deal with, but she meant it. She wanted us to tell a story without any obstacles or confrontations. I then carefully explained to her that a story without conflict would not be a story, but just a series of occurrences. Man wants pizza. Man goes to the fridge. There is pizza in the fridge. Man eats pizza. Theater. Man finds pizza gone. Dramatic, no! Man vows revenge. Starts talking to himself. Answers himself. Calls pizza, "My precious." Leads the hobbitses to Taco Bell. They're taking the hobbits to Taco Bell! Worked at a pet food store. A woman came in and asked where to put topical flea medicine on her kids. Frontline. I laughed way too hard. She complained to my manager, who also laughed. Everyone knows you need flea collars for kids. Parents these days. My uncle asked my brother if he thought my other brother, who's gay, bleached his asshole. My brother told me the story. I kept waiting for him to start laughing or smiling or anything, but he just stared at me with such a straight face. I was like, "Oh, you're serious?" "I don't know, dude." What was I supposed to say? Deadpan this back. "Did you need a recommendation on where to go?" Then your uncle deadpans back, "Yes." Then frick your uncle in the ass, deadpan. I work as a server in a restaurant. We use little wooden trays as check presenters, and since it's an open-air restaurant, we weigh down the receipts with decorative stones, shiny ones, like for the bottom of fish tanks. I dropped a check for an older couple, and when I got back, the man said, "You should warn people that those rocks aren't chocolates. I could have broken a tooth." I get a lot of older people who like to josh around with me, so I definitely thought he was kidding. He was not. He was actually mad at me because he had tried to eat that rock, and it was obviously my fault. My husband and I were in Costa Rica, and when we pulled up outside of our resort, a gentleman brought us a tray with 2 champagne glasses containing the best pina coladas I'd ever had. Next to each glass was a large white pill, like an antacid. We both stared at one another, not knowing what to do. Thank God we didn't eat them, because right then the gentleman pulled out a carafe of water and poured it on one of the pills, which expanded and turned it into a face cloth. We both came very close to eating whole face cloths. Met a guy and I told him my name. He said, "I'll probably not remember it. I have memory problems." I said, "Haha, yeah, I'm bad with names too." Met him again 2 days later and I remembered his name. He, on the other hand, didn't remember meeting me. And when I realized it wasn't a joke, I was told by his mother that he actually does have memory problems. I felt like an asshole. Oh well. He doesn't remember me laughing at him. Met a guy over a dozen times at multiple college parties. He would mention having memory trouble. Found out that 6 months into the school year, they had a weird mold thing going on in their rental. That took an unexpected turn, to be honest. The mold caused memory trouble? Her. How do we even know that dinosaurs were called dinosaurs if they're all dead now, and we've never met one in real life? Me. Haha, that's funny. Her. What's funny? Me. Oh, honey. It took me literally half an hour to even get her slightly on board with the fact that things are called things because we decided on the name, not because things inherently have a name that we discover. I wish I was joking. My sister-in-law, who has a bachelor's degree in nursing, one time said something about driving to Alaska because it's not that far from Texas. While our family was having a holiday dinner together, we all laughed. She asked what was so funny. We just stared at each other. She thought Alaska was by Mexico because of the map inset. Guess she had never seen it on a globe. Did she just think Alaska just happened to form with that huge, perfectly straight eastern border? What about the fact that it's really cold there and tropical in Hawaii, which is apparently right next to Alaska? I'm just curious what she thought the processes were here. A man was regaling his fellow partygoers with his wasted jokes. He described being found as a newborn in a field after his teenage mother hid her pregnancy and gave birth at home. All he knew about her was she was a Waffle House waitress. We sat there enthralled, waiting for the punchline until we realized he'd moved from life of the party onto the in vino veritas stage of wantedness. Damn, if that's not a perfect country song though. You know, real country. My mama got pregnant by a man in a cowboy hat who ordered a Coke. Her boots wet when her water broke. Too poor to live, too poor to love. She did what a mama does, what a mama does. Came to a field, didn't know where to go. Squattled down and out I keeled. What a mama does, what a mama does. Her baby's cries rang out into the sky. Used her Waffle House apron to dry her eyes. Not even a pickup truck to stay the night. What a mama does, what a mama does. Now she's old, weathered by the time, thinking about her baby and wondering if he's doing just fine. Yes, mama, I'm fine. What a mama does, what a mama does. Outro as a whisper. I love you, mama. I loved my dad. I just feel the need to say that ahead of time. My dad lived a very hard life, never learned to read and worked with his hands his whole life to provide for my mom and me. One time, when I was about 15, we were watching Jay Leno and he was doing jaywalking. I was talking about how funny it was that people could be that stupid. I said, can you believe there are really people in America who don't know how many stars are on the American flag? My dad kind of chuckled and then said, there are 52, right? I cracked up thinking it was a joke, and then I finally stopped to see the look on his face and realized he was serious. I felt like an absolute jerk because I knew he was hurt, but I just really never imagined he was serious. I learned a pretty important lesson that day about judging people and being careful what you say that might hurt someone. My brother and family were here on the 4th of July. I showed my SIL the video of Jimmy Kimmel where they asked people on the street to explain why they celebrate that holiday. I was dying laughing at their answers. Then she says, so why do we celebrate it? I was floored. I also felt like total crap. The answer, of course, is that we pretend that's the day the Declaration of Independence was signed, even though it isn't. A coworker mentioned that she thought milk was too rich, so she poured herself a glass of water and added 2 of those little cups of non-dairy creamer. This was almost 2 years ago, and I still don't know what to think. At my aunt's house, they drink their milk with ice. I've seen this happen for over 15 years and still cannot get over how strange it is. I was a waiter, and the guy said his wife wanted to take me home. I've never heard of anything like that before. I'm a gay man, and this has happened to me more than once. The first time was when I was 22 in a bar in Mexico City, and I had to walk the fine line of telling a larger, older, and more threatening guy that yes, his wife was hot enough to bang. But no, I personally wasn't going to bang her due to other plans. I got crabs that very night from a guy who I picked up in the subway. It was nearly Christmas. I was at a Kobe steakhouse, teppanyaki, like Benihana's. And as always, it was the birthday of a girl across the table. She was there with her mom and probably a good friend. Anyway, once the table realized it was her birthday, we all wished her a good day. She asked me how old I thought she was. If I were putting money on it, I would have said 13, but I figured she'd feel good if I thought she was a bit older, so I guessed 16. She got mad and said, "No, I'm 20. I laughed. She didn't. Then I realized she was serious. Now every time my friends and I go to Kobe Steakhouse, we bring it up. I know how she feels. I'm 28, and I got carded last month to prove I'm over 13. It's pretty irritating sometimes. Usually it gives me a laugh. I also sound very young, which doesn't help. I met a guy who's studying engineering with me, and he mentioned to me that he's part of the Flat Earth Society. I laughed at first, but he didn't laugh with me. We ended up having an hour-long debate. No matter what I said, he wouldn't believe me, and I learned that he believed in almost every conspiracy theory out there. We're still friends, but we don't mention politics or anything like that anymore. He's also a Trump supporter, despite the fact that we live in South Africa. How did he study physics? Gravitation is solely based on spherical planets. First day on a new job, my boss was discussing standard office policies. He said, "And I'd like to point out that we have an open door policy here." I said, "Oh great, so if I have a problem I can come to you?" He said, "No, I mean keep your office door open at all times." Oh. I think that's an annoying policy. Sometimes I just work better and can concentrate with my office door shut. I would see how it would be bad if that was the norm, but I don't think it should be a rule. On a related note, Susan Cain's book Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking should be a mandatory read for all bosses, and I say that as a boss. I really don't like that kind of attitude. I wish I could be judged on the work I do and not how much it looks like I'm working. It's alright though, I guess, because I can be lazy as frick as long as it looks like I'm working, so it all works out for me. I posted this before, but I was on a first date with a guy I met at work, and things were going good till his phone starts ringing and he tells me to be quiet because it was his wife. So how'd the rest of the date go? They're getting married on Tuesday. Hanging out in a bar in downtown Nashville, play wingman to my buddy and fend off the advances of a very large-waisted girl who thinks I'm more attractive because I'm married. I make small talk with a tall, lanky younger dude who says he's in town to play bass for some various bands. We talk about life in between songs. He tells me about being recently married, and we talk about our wives for a few minutes. After a long silence, he stares off in the distance and says, "Well, time to get this ring off and find somebody to screw, am I right?" It was at this point that I realized how wasted the kid was, and I spent the next 30 minutes explaining to him that no, being in a different zip code didn't count as a legitimate reason to cheat on your wife. After my sister-in-law had her son, she had a lot of trouble with her weight. She was big, and always saying how hard it was to have a baby, never again, etc., etc., and the weight kept piling on. She must have reached nearly 18 stone, about 250 pounds. Due to holidays, work, and other reasons, my husband and I ended up not seeing her for quite a few months. When we did all meet up again, she said, with the flattest tone of voice, "I'm going to have another baby." I burst out laughing because since her son was born, all she would say is that she would never have another. She never wanted any more kids. "No, I really am," she says. "I'll believe that when I see it," says I. "So when are you having this baby then?" "In 3 months. "Ah, oh dear." My mother-in-law compounded the awkwardness by saying, "Well, didn't you notice the bump?" Basically drawing even more attention to her weight. I still cringe thinking about it, and it was 4 years ago. It really is hard to tell if the woman is already carrying a lot of weight in her hips and midsection. My cousin was a rather large woman. I told her she was hardly showing. "What are you talking about? I'm huge!" I work in a pub, and the amount of times I've laughed at some old guy's racist jokes before realizing they weren't jokes is disappointing. That's why it's not super great to make or laugh at racist jokes anyways. For the people who are serious, you're just making them think it's fine. For the people who need to be concerned by those statements, they need to figure out if you actually agree or are joking, and it's pretty dangerous to mess that up. I own a small electronics design business, 30 employees. A part-time intern working 20 hours a week and making about $15 an hour came to me and said, "I have to cut my hours back to 10 a week, so I'll need for you to double my salary." Yeah, no, have a nice life. I love the logic. He probably still thinks you suck. When she said, "Please don't ask me out on another date," literally 10 minutes into the date. My best friend since kindergarten just announced that he's changing genders. When he told me, I thought he was making some elaborate joke with me, as he often does. I didn't buy it fully until he came over to my house and slept over. I woke up in the morning and he was in the bathroom. When he came out, he had on full makeup and a dress on. That was when I went, "Oh crap, you're serious." Still my best friend. I don't care what she does, as long as she's happy. She has nothing but my full support, and I've been helping her every day get a little bit better with her transition. Very sweet to see the pronouns change in your comment as she transitioned. My dad told me he didn't like gay people. I was gearing up to come out to him, and was testing the waters, so to speak, by raising the topic in conversation. I did not expect him to be against it, because he's pretty dang liberal on most other issues. I was going to come out to a female friend who I was so sure was cool. This would have been the first time I came out to someone who wasn't themselves LGBTQ. 10 seconds before I was going to tell her, she indicates to me to look at the woman sitting near us and tells me how she thought she looked like a lesbian and how she didn't like those people. I was so ready to come out before that statement, but that put me back in the closet for another year and a half. It was very well known in high school that I was gay. I can't remember the details, but my friend made a joke about it. My table of friends and I all laughed. The teacher walking by stopped and shouted, "Matthew, you can't call someone that, that's disgusting." We all just stared at her and you could see in her face the slow realization. She never apologized. I never understood why teachers don't apologize more often when they make mistakes like this. I'm trying to become a teacher at the moment, and if 4 years of college education have taught me anything up to this point, it's that I am incredibly ignorant of many things, and this can indeed cause me to run afoul at times. Broke my arm real bad once. Went to urgent care, the doctor there said it was a hairline fracture and didn't even need a cast. So I laughed, considering my hand was stuck in a downward position, could barely move my fingers, and the bone was visibly pressing against the skin of my arm. Turns out she just didn't know crap. We went to an actual orthopedist and he freaked out and had us in surgery for the very next morning. Have not been to any urgent care since. That reminds me of a homeless cat that my girlfriend and I took in who had some obvious health issues. As I noted, his shoulder seemed messed up. Most people can't specify a cat's injury and just generalize arm, leg, or whatever, so it seemed bad enough to me that I could specify his messed up shoulder. Took him to a vet. Oh, his shoulder is fine. Maybe his hand is sore or something. Took him to a second vet who did an x-ray. His shoulder is completely gone, disintegrated into dust. Human doctors aren't the only ones who need their work to be double-checked. After finishing an otherwise flawless interview, we shook hands and I said, "Thank you, sir." She replied, "Ma'am." Just a slip of the tongue, or was the interviewer very androgynous and you genuinely couldn't discern her gender? My close friend was chatting with me on the day of our college graduation, each with a degree in biology. They thought birds weren't technically animals and had a separate category. I still haven't been able to convince my fiance's family that insects are a subcategory of animal. I had an argument about this with my wife. I thought it was common knowledge that insects were animals. She informed me that most people didn't believe so. So there's me, at 10 in the evening, as we walk down the street asking random strangers whether insects were animals. Not a single person I asked said yes. She won that argument. For clarity, she understood that insects were animals. The disagreement was about whether this was common knowledge. A new coworker came up to me one day and said, "What comes after 999? She got offended when I laughed. Turned out she had a learning disability and could not make the cognitive leap from 9 to 10. She also wore 2 watches so that she would know what time it was where her boyfriend worked. We were in CST and her boyfriend worked in EST. Oof, I feel bad for anyone with a handicap that's severe. But I don't blame you for laughing in that situation. Unless you're a special ed teacher or something, I don't think anyone would expect that question to be serious." Thanks for watching until the end. Please feel free to share any experiences you have in the comment section down below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and stop by the channel to check out another amazing video.